Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining in today. So, folks, before we proceed ahead in today's session, can you please confirm whether you're able to hear my voice and see my screen? Please make use of YouTube chat or wherever the platform. So, we are going live in multiple platforms through Manifold AI Learning. I would request your help in confirming whether you're able to hear me or not from the chat window, that is, from the comment section or chat window. So, please use the various options that you have got to confirm whether you're able to hear me or not. Okay, I see a lot of responses flowing in. So that's great. I can see Dheeraj. I can see Aditya. I can see Ramesh. I can see, okay, Sridhar confirming, Samiksha, Shruti, okay, Charitra, Aritra. Okay. Excellent, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for confirming, and it's good. So, folks, first of all, I welcome you on this live session on demystifying the MLOps. Now, this session we'll be learning about what exactly is this MLOps, the core idea about this MLOps, and we'll also have an hands-on about how it actually works. All right, folks. Now, before we proceed ahead with today's agenda, I want to understand from you. So, this session I have actually dedicated for all the entire learning community of Manifold AI Learning, along with specifically for the learners who are part of our learning community with the course of this practical MLOps. So, folks, is any one of you is part of our course that is as part of our learning community of Manifold AI Learning, and which are the course that you have referred to till now? Okay, please do respond. I want to ensure that like what kind of learning community that you through which that you have joined so that I can tailor made this today's session. I can see Aditya. Aditya is saying that I'm from Practical MLOps. Diksha is from Practical MLOps. Okay, Ramya is also from Practical MLOps. Sridhar MLOps. Okay, I can see the various other learners as well. Samiksha is saying that she's part of our Practical MLOps community. That's great. So I can see a few more learners have also joined. So, folks, can you please confirm? So, are you part of our Manifold AI Learning community? If yes, please let me know the course that you have enrolled with us, just to get a clear understanding about your learning journey. Where do you actually stand? Okay, thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Sridhar. Okay. Okay, I see the responses from Vishnu. Excellent, guys. Thank you so much. So I can see most of the learners are part of our practical MLOps learning community, as well as I can see few learners who are part of our AWS machine learning certification. And I also have few more learners who are part of LinkedIn community, and we have few learners who are part of our YouTube community. Wow, that's great. So let's see about and let us proceed ahead with today's agenda. See, as we progress in this session, so we will understand what exactly is this MLOps and the overall cycle of this MLOps. And one of the common question that I've got in the past few weeks is, how do I implement the CI/CD pipeline? That is where most of the learners were actually struggling in implementing this CI/CD pipeline. So that's the hands-on that we'll be looking at as we progress in this session. So let us understand first. Let's have a quick recap about what exactly is this MLOps. So when I say MLOps is also known as the machine learning operation. Here, this MLOps is made up of the set of methodologies and the automated procedures, which is geared towards the effective management of the code, the data that we are dealing with, along with the models that we want to use in the overall context of this machine learning. So that is the overall idea about this machine learning operation. We want to combine everything that makes up our machine learning implementation: code, data, and the models. Effective management of these can be done with the help of this machine learning operation. Now, when I say machine learning, this machine learning process, it's going to generate some assets. Now, these assets would include the code, that is the code that we actually write it to apply the machine learning on a given data set, and the data that we actually use it as part of our training and the test data, and the models that we generate as part of our training process. this all these things, it undergo a sequential progression. So at the start, you will start doing the experimentation. You'll get the data. Once you get the data, you'll do some experimentation and you will see how do you process the data set and perform the processing on, or like perform the analysis on this data set. So all those things that you would be doing it over there. Okay. Now here, this machine learning. So what it starts is, it starts with experimentation. So it starts with early experimentation, and we generally call it as development stage. And this is characterized by loosely access controls and limited testing. So at this point of time, when you're doing the experiment, you are basically interested in making the code work on a given data set so that you can get a better functioning model. Now, while working, we have got various platforms that are actually available. So I'm just giving an example of Databricks. So in our learning journey, we have made use of AWS, and in case of Databricks, yeah, even Databricks offers various platform. And in case of AWS also provides the various set of tools inside that platform, inside the SageMaker platform, which we have used in detail, which will help us to manage these assets in a most effective way possible. So here, when we talk about this MLOps, it's about effective management of the data and the model along with all the dependencies. Now, while working with MLOps, there are some general recommendations from the practical implementation perspective. So here, when we talk about the MLOps, so just like we follow the approach of implementing anything for any software development project, it is also recommended similar things for the MLOps project as well. So it is recommended that we create a separate environment for each stage. And generally, the three common stage in any machine learning projects are development, stage, and prod. So these are the three commonly used environments, or three commonly stages that we say when we are working on real-time implementation. Now, depending on the project requirement, so you might have more as well, like depending on the scenario that you're working. So you might have more as well. So here, each of these environment that I'm saying, each of these will become an execution environment. So this execution environment, it is a place where my model and data are actually created, or this is a place where my data will be consumed by the code. And each execution environment will contain the compute instances, that is the CPU, or the power that is required to perform the training, to perform the analysis. It will have its own associated runtimes, libraries, and it will have some of its own automated task. And this overall workflow recommends employing the standard nomenclature for these stages, that is development stage and production environment. Okay, so here, when we talk about the development environment, okay, when we talk about this development environment, so like generally we start with the training. Now, before we go there into the development environment and perform this training, so let us look into the another aspect of managing the machine learning project, that is access management and version management. Now, when we are doing the implementation, okay, so access control and the versioning, they are the key components of any software operations framework. And as an MLOps, in the MLOps approach, so there are some important recommendations. So in as part of the recommendation, so some of the key recommendations are like, it is recommended that the source code that I'll be writing it, that is the pipeline that I'll be building it for processing the data set. So we have to make use of Git for version control. Okay, it is recommended that we make use of Git for version control and store the data in a centralized place where we have the high availability of the data set and highly scalable place. And we should also have the ability to manage the models. Okay, we should have the ability to manage the models as well as the overall model development. So these are the key things or the key recommendations whenever we are implementing it, implementing or working on any machine learning project with MLOps framework. Now here, when we start working in the development stage or a development environment, so we follow some key stages or key steps. So first step is obviously the data source. So within the development environment, as a data scientist, you will typically possess the read-only access to the production data because, as I mentioned, security plays a key role over here. So as a data scientist, you'll just have the ability to read the data. Like if you have a production system, you'll have the option to read the data from the production system. Now, to adhere to the data governance requirement, the development environment may, in some cases, may only grant an access to the mirrored or sanitized version of the production data because this is a place where you'll be running the experiments. And also, the data scientists are equipped with read-write privileges in a separate development storage environment, which would allow us to craft and experiment with the new features and the additional data labels. Okay, so you will have the read write permission in the development environment. Now, once you have selected the data source, the next thing that you normally do as a data scientist is you will perform the exploratory data analysis. So at this point of time, as a data scientist, you will engage in dynamic iterative process, which is the EDA. And here you'll be making use of tools like notebooks and the visualization so that you can explore the data set. And here this ad hoc process, it actually it is very different from what you would use it for the deployment or in other execution environment, because at this point in the EDA step, you're basically interested in understanding how does your data would look like. Okay, this is about the second step, that is exploratory data analysis. Now this is followed by, okay, the code step. Now in this code step, okay, what we do is here in this code step, all the code related to the machine learning system is archived within the code repository. And as I mentioned, we'll be using the Git based repository. So using the Git based repository, we will be archiving the code, and data scientists will initiate the creation, or they will also modify the pipeline within the development branch of a Git project. So this is about the code part, and this is followed by the updating the feature tables. So here at this point of time, so once you have built the code in the third step, you will go ahead and you would update your feature tables. So the model development pipeline, it actually draws from both raw data tables and the existing feature table. And what it does is it is going to deposit the results in the tables which in this feature store. Okay, that's the overall idea about this updation of the feature table. Now, once that is done, you will go ahead and perform two common things. One is training and the other one is the hyperparameter tuning. Now, in case of training the model step, so you will construct the pipeline for model training as well as the other related tasks that you have got. Now, this time when you're constructing the pipeline, you can make use of the read-only production data, or you can make use of the non-production data. Generally, when we are performing the training, we will use the combination of both production data and the non-production data. And these pipeline may draw from the feature tables in other development or production environment. And this pipeline, that is this training model pipeline, will include the two key common tasks. Okay, so once the code of the feature engineering, training and inference and other pipelines has been developed, the data science or ML engineers incorporate these changes from the development branch into the source control through a code commit. Okay, we'll perform the training, and like here we'll perform the feature engineering, we'll perform the training, and once that is done, we'll go ahead and perform the inference. Now, once we perform the inference, so as a machine learning engineer or a data scientist, you are going to incorporate all these changes into a Git branch, which we generally call it as development branch. Okay, we'll call it as a development branch. Now, once we go ahead and commit into this development branch, then you will go ahead and take up the next step. See what it says. The next step is code commit. So once the code for feature engineering, training, inference, and other pipeline has been developed, so we are going to incorporate these changes into a development branch. And once the code that we have got, okay, once the code that we have got is present right here inside our development branch, okay, the next comes is moving to the staging environment. All right, team, I'll take a pause here. So are we good till now? So we have looked into the stages or the general principle that we follow in case of development environment in case of MLOps. So are we good till now? Please confirm by typing as all good. I can see Rajiv saying as all good. I can see Deshpande. I can see Shruti. I can see Samir. What about others? Okay, so I can see Saurabh. Wow, that's great. Thank you, Rajiv. Okay. Uh, okay, thank you, Robin. I see a response from Robin as well. I see a response from Samira Gautam. Okay, I see a response from Kavya. Excellent. So you are now clear as what happens in case of the development environment. Now, once we have committed this code into the development environment, so we'll move on to the staging environment. Now, here, this is a place where we start doing the machine learning model deployment. Now, in this staging stage, okay, or in the staging environment, the focus is testing the machine learning pipeline code, which will ensure that it is ready for production. Now, the entire ML pipeline code is tested, is actually in this stage. So we'll be testing the code for the model training as well as whatever the feature engineering pipeline that we have created, even those will be tested under the staging stage. And along with that, at the end, we will go ahead and perform the inference as well. So generally, what we do is as a machine learning practitioner, you will create a continuous integration pipeline to implement the unit and the integration testing so that you can run at this stage. Now, even in our hands-on learning journey of practical MLOps, we have done a similar activity where we have included a unit test and an integration test to see whether the trained model is working as per the expectation or not. And the output of the staging process is a release branch which would trigger the CI/CD system so that I can move it to the production stage. Now, this is a stage of the staging environment. So what we do is as we progress and the first step in the staging environment, we will start by initiating a pull request directed towards the staging branch. Okay, we can call it as a main branch or we can create a separate branch itself depending on our terminology in the project. We can use any of those terminology and like we'll just pull our code from the development branch to the staging branch. Now this pull request is the one will be serving as a catalyst for initiating the continuous integration process. So once we do the pull, so we will go ahead and perform the merge and then we will conduct the unit test. So within this continuous integration process, we will perform the automatic compilation of the source code. We'll perform the unit test and then in case where these tests yield the unfavorable outcome, then what it does is the pull request that we have made, it will be rejected. So it is very important to note that the unit tests operate in isolation and they do not interact with data or any other external services. And this is followed by the integration testing. Now, in case of the integration testing phase under the staging environment, so we will perform the feature engineering, model training, inference monitoring, and the overall idea is as part of this integration testing is we have to ensure the seamless interoperation. Now, in order for us to expedite this, okay, in order to expedite the execution of the integration test, So we'll also perform certain model training steps, so which will act as a trade-off between thoroughness of testing and speed. And once the successful test of this integration test is complete within my staging branch, I can now say that the whatever the code that we have built is ready for moving it into my next environment, that is production environment. Okay, that's the overall idea about this integration testing. Now, once the integration test is completed, we would then go ahead and merge into the staging branch. That means, like, when we initiate the pull request, all this test would happen. And once the testing is completed, then the code will be merged into my the staging branch. Okay, that is what is going to happen. Okay, so in the event of successful testing outcome, the code can be integrated into the staging branch, and the periodic integration test, we can actually schedule it to ensure the quality of model that we have got and the code that we have got is in line with the production requirement. And this is one of the important things that you need to remember. And once the code reaches the state of readiness for the deployment into the production environment, so we can then go ahead and initiate the creation of a release branch. Okay, so that means that is a point it reaches the production stage. Now, in this production stage, so the machine learning engineers are the ones who are responsible for overseeing the production environment where machine learning pipelines are actually deployed. And these pipelines perform various tasks, which will include generating the fresh feature values, training and testing the new model versions, publishing the prediction to downstream tables or applications, and continuously monitoring the process to ensure the optimal performance and the stability. And here, the data scientist will typically when I talk about a data scientist, as a data scientist, you will not have the option to write something on the production environment, because like no one should be given from the best practices. Okay, so we'll not be having the production access, you'll just have the read only access, just like as I mentioned earlier. So this production version of the model is the one which is trained with full production data. And here we can say that we can make use of ML flow registry, or it can make use of SageMaker registry, which we have used in a learning journey, or any other registries that you want to use, so that we have the version present over there. And this pipeline can be triggered by code changes or automatic retraining jobs, which will consist of two tasks, that is training and tuning, followed by the evaluation. So that is the overall idea of working in the production stage, that is in the production environment. Now, once we have deployed it onto the production environment, it doesn't just end there. So we would go ahead and ensure that the serving system that we have got, that is going to load the production model version from the model registry and processes the request for the new data that is actually being received. It will fetch the features from the online feature store, scoring data, and it will return the predictions for us. So that is the overall idea as what would happen in case of the overall MLOps pipeline. And once this is done, yeah, we will also have the continuous deployment as well, which I did not add it. So we'll have the continuous deployment phase, where when we have the new model, it will pick up the new model and deploy it onto the production environment. And this deployment can actually serve the online request that is coming in, or we can also perform the inference, which could be a batch or a streaming, which is followed by the monitoring of the model. And if the model performance degrades, we will go ahead and trigger the automatic model retraining. So this is what it would consist of in case of the MLOps pipeline. All right. So this was about the quick overview of what are the things that you can expect when we talk about the MLOps and the various stages and the practices that we follow. Now that you are aware of the basics of MLOps, as part of our next agenda, we'll take a look into the creation of CI/CD pipeline of the code in AWS. This is one of the most requested topic in our Q&A section of our course. So I've added this code specifically for the learners who are struggling with the same. And what I found was like most of the learners were actually learning or performing this hands-on in a different region than the one that I have actually used. So what I'll do is, as part of this learning journey today, we will show you the code, okay, where I'll be running on the region of US East 1, so that you'll get an idea as how you can implement the CI/CD pipeline on the US East 1 region. So what I'll do is, in the meantime, I'll just go ahead and log into my AWS console. Now, before I do that and start with our hands-on team, so any questions till now? So if you have any questions, do let me know. If you're clear, please confirm by typing as all good. Okay, I see the response from Saubhagya. I see response from Robin. I see response from Aditya. I see response from uh, Sridhar. I see response from Deeksha, Shruti, Kavya. I see response from uh, Santrupti, Amol. Excellent. Thank you so much, team, for confirming. So let's have a look into this hands-on of performing this CI/CD, implementing the CI/CD with the help of this AWS. So for the demonstration purpose, I'll make use of the code which I've got in the Manifold AI Learning GitHub repository. So I'll just go to this Manifold AI Learning GitHub repository, and the source code that I'll do as of now, that I'll use as of now is, yeah, we'll take a, since this topic of CI/CD pipeline is part of our the DevOps. So I'll be using this repository. I'm sharing the repository over here in the chat window. Go ahead and click on this link of the repository for the source code that I'll be using as part of our learning journey. And more specifically, I'll be using the files that I have got under the folder of this code pipeline. Okay, I'll make use of the files that are present inside this 8 code pipeline. Okay, these are the files that I'll be using. So here, if you look into it, so I've got an index.html file, I've got buildspec.yaml file, which is responsible for performing the build, and I have the appspec.yaml file. So I have all these things that is present right here, team. Okay, so give me a second. Yeah, so I've got all these things as part of our like code repository. I'll make use of these folder files so that I can show you this hands-on. See, in order to perform this CI/CD pipeline, first thing that we need to do is, so we have to start by creating a repository. So in my case, I have already set up my AWS CLI. That means in my terminal, I've already installed the AWS CLI over here. I'll say AWS hyphen version. Okay. So this will confirm that the CLI is actually installed in my local system. That means I don't have to go ahead and install it. And I've already configured the CLI so that it can communicate with my AWS account. Okay, so what I'll do is, to get started, I'll start by creating an empty repository. I'll go to this code commit service, and being inside this code commit service, I'll be using the region of US East 1 for the demonstration. Okay, I'll create a new repository, and I'm going to say CI/CD demo. That's the new repository that I'm going to create. Okay, I'll create a new repository. Now for this repository, I'll perform the cloning over here into my desktop, and I'll add the file from this folder number 8. Okay, let us go ahead and do that. So to perform the cloning, I'll just copy this button which says as copy the repository, and I'll go to this desktop. Okay, and I'll just paste this code right here. So this will perform the cloning into my local system, that is in my local folder. So on the desktop, it should be creating a folder of CI/CD demo. So let me look into it. So here, if I open up this folder link, see there is a blank folder that is created, that is CI/CD demo. So it's a blank folder. Now for this folder, we'll go ahead and add the file. So as I mentioned, under the folder of SDLC automation, under the folder 8 code pipeline, I'll just copy those files and place it right here for the CI/CD demo. That means I have added the files from my GitHub repository into this newly created repository. So that's what I have done. Now, once I've added over here, so the next thing that we will be doing is we'll perform the commit and we'll push the files into this remote repository, that is code commit. So I'll first go inside this folder of CI/CD demo. Okay. Then I'll just say git status. So we have these files which we are not tracking. So to start tracking, I'll say git add dot and then git commit -m to perform the commit into my local repository. Then if let's check the branch, I'll say git branch. So in my case, it has created a master branch. So what I'll do is I'll say git push -u. Okay. So I want to push to my origin, that is my code commit repository. The branch that I want to push is master branch. So git push -u origin master, and I'll press the enter key. So this will push the file from my local repository to my AWS code commit repository. So if I just refresh this page of this code commit, so you can see that all the files from my local folder is now added to this code commit repository. Okay, so that's how easy it is. Now, once I have the source code ready, so let us say as part of this next activity, obviously I'll be interested to have a pipeline. Like the one that I'll be interested is something like this. See, I'll have the source code present in my Git repository. Now let us assume that I like the using the source code present inside this code commit repository, I want to perform the code build. Okay, so let us go ahead and create a build project. So I'm going to start the code build, which is a service, and I'll start by creating a new project. I'll say create build project. Ensure that you're in the US East 1 region, and I'll mention the project as CI/CD demo. Okay, and source provider is code commit, repository CI/CD demo, and I'll be using the master branch. And for the environment, I'll make use of managed environment, which is Amazon Linux 2. Okay, now what I would recommend you is, so there's a under this folder, okay, there's already a help that I've mentioned when it comes to this code build. Okay, it is recommended that we make use of this Amazon Linux 2 runtime with ARC64 standard 2.2, Linux 2 ARC64 standard 2.2. So that is something that I'll be using standard. Okay, ARC64 Linux standard 2.2. So ensure that you use this image. Okay, and for the service name, I'll just go ahead and create a new service name, service role, or you can go ahead and attach the existing service role. And for the build spec file, currently the build spec file is being expected in my root directory and it's already present, build spec.yaml file. So we are good over there. And here under the artifacts, we can specify where exactly that you want to push the artifacts. If you observe in our build spec.yaml file, here we are pushing the artifacts to an S3 bucket. So I'll have to specify the S3 bucket. I'll say Amazon S3 and the bucket name is, I'll just make use of any of the bucket name that I have got right now. So I'll just say uh, code pipeline US East 1, some code pipeline bucket is there. I'm just pushing over there. Okay, that's what I'm using it right now for the demonstration purpose. And for artifact packaging, I'll set it as zip. Then I'll keep this remaining settings as it is, and I'll go ahead and I'll create a build project. So this will create a build project. Okay. Now this build project is going to, like what it does is, it will actually perform the build by pulling the code from the code commit repository. And once the build is complete, it will push the artifacts into an S3 bucket. So let us check whether we have all the code ready and we are not having any issue. I can just go ahead and start the build. So if I simply start this build, this would start the overall build activity for me. It will pull the code from my code commit and it will perform the code build. That means in this, while performing the build, it will follow the instruction that I've mentioned inside this buildspec.yaml file. So it will choose the runtime version of Node.js, and then it will like it is using some environment variables. It is printing the environment variables, and after that, it is just displaying some messages for me. Okay. Uh, and then it will perform some pre-build activity. After that, it is performing some build. I'm just mentioning some like I'm just performing the some random test over here. So you can think about it in this way. In case of install phase, you will choose the runtime version. Maybe you will choose the Python as a runtime version, and in that runtime version you will go ahead and perform all the installation from the requirements.txt file. It can be the pip, or it can be the streamlit, it can be scikit-learn, numpy, pandas, whatever the runtime, like whatever the installation that you want to do, you will go ahead and run those commands over here so that you will prepare your environment. In the pre-build phase, you can do the validation, like if anything is like working or not, or if something needs to be done as part of pre-build. So this is where you can take the this pre-build activity. Under this build phase, you will go ahead and maybe you will package everything into a Docker image and push it into an ECR, or it can be a basic build activity by simply performing the training. And once you perform the training, running some unit test over there, and maybe you can also run some integration test over there, like under the post build. So it all depends on your project as how you want to configure during the build. Okay. And finally, whatever the artifacts that you're generating, it could be the trained model or it could be the cleaned file. So everything you can push it into an S3 bucket in our case. So we are seeing that the overall build status is completed. That means the whatever the commands that I mentioned in the buildspec.yaml file has been executed without any issues. Now what I want to do is, once I perform the build, I want to go ahead and deploy it. So if I want to deploy, I will require some EC2 instances. So I'm going to launch an EC2 instance for the demonstration purpose. And if I want to deploy an EC2 instance, so first and foremost, for this EC2 instance, okay, I should be having this necessary permission to interact with the code build. Interact with the code deploy agent, because I'll be deploying the code with the help of this code build. So for the name, I'll just say CI/CD. That's the name that I'll mention. And for the operating system, I'll just go ahead and select the Linux to AMI, and then instance type t2.micro, and I'll just select a key pair over here. Then we'll create some security group. Now here, as I mentioned, if I want to go ahead and uh, deploy the code with the help of this code deploy service, as we have already learned as part of your learning journey, we should be having the IAM instance profile attached link to it. I'll just go ahead and assign the IAM instance profile, which has got the ability to which has got the ability to interact with the required services. So I'll just show you. Okay, this is an IAM instance profile that I've got, which says as code deploy MLOps EC2. I'll show you by taking you to this IAM screen. So here under this IAM screen, I'll show you the service role. Okay. So MLOps EC2, that's the one that we have assigned. So what does it have? It is having the permission to read the data from the S3 bucket. Okay, it is having the data permission to read the data from the S3 bucket. See, because whatever the build that I'm performing, I'm pushing it into an S3 bucket. So if I want to deploy it, then my EC2 instance should have the necessary permission to interact with this EC2, like to interact with this S3 service. So that's the reason we have to create a service rule which can interact with my EC2 instance between this S3 and EC2. Okay, that is what I have created. And along with that, We also need to install the code deploy agent. So here for the installation of the code deploy agent, so in the repository itself, if I come back, there's a file called codedeploy.md. So under this file, we will go ahead and copy this user data and we will paste it over here as the user data. So what it is going to do is it will just get the installer file and will perform the installation. Okay, let us go ahead and launch this instance. So this has launched the instance. So let us wait for this instance to be launched for a while. And then we will have to check whether we are able to run the code deploy agent, whether the code deploy agent is actually running inside this EC2 instance or not. So that is one thing that we need to check right here. Okay, now it is running. So let us do one thing, team. It will take some time for the security check to complete. So in the meantime, I'm also going to start something called as code deploy. Okay, and here I'll go ahead and create an application first. So under this code deploy, okay, I'll start by creating an application. And for the application name, I'll say CI/CD. And for the compute platform, I'll just say EC2 because that is where I'll be deploying my application. For this EC2 application, that is for the CI/CD application, I'll create a deployment group which consists of the series of the EC2 environment or EC2 system. In my case, I'll say dev as a deployment group. And we need to create a service role. I'll just create a service role that I've got with me, which is code deploy MLOps V1. Okay, that's a service role that I'm going to assign, which will grant this code deploy access to the target instances. Okay, so this is going to grant my code deploy to interact with my EC2 instance. Okay, that is what I've got. And I'll be deploying in place. And here I'll be deploying it to the EC2 instances where the name is CI/CD. So that means it has found one instance, that is the EC2 instance that we have created. That is where we'll be deploying the code. And I'm not going to uh, install the code deploy agent over here using systems manager because we are already taking care with the help of this user data. And I'm going to disable the load balancing and I'm going to create this deployment group. Okay, so this is what I'm telling right here. Okay, so I'm deploying it. I'm creating this deployment group. Now let us come back and see the status of this EC2 instance, whether it was successfully created or not, and whether it contains the code deploy agent running inside it. So I'll try to perform the SSH over here using this EC2 instance connect. Okay, so I'm able to perform the SSH into this EC2 instance. Now I'll just run the command of sudo service code deploy agent status. So this will help me to check whether my code deploy agent is actually running or not. So in our case, from the message, it says that the code deploy agent is running, which means we will see success in the installation over here. So that's a good thing. So that's actually a very good thing, team. So we have the code deploy agent, everything is set up. We have the code deploy created. We have the deployment group created. Everything is fine. Now what I'll do is we'll just go ahead and create a code pipeline, which will help me to complete this entire CI/CD. So I'll create a new pipeline. So my pipeline name, I'll just say CI/CD. Role name, I'll create a new role. Okay, I'll click on next. Source provider is my code commit. So that is where my source code present. Repository name is CI/CD demo. Branch name is master. Click on next. We'll make use of code build as a build provider. CI/CD demo is a project name. We'll perform a single build. I'll click on next. Deploy is with the help of the code deploy. Okay. Application is the CI/CD. I want to deploy it on the development. I'll click on next. I'll keep the remaining settings as it is. We'll create a new pipeline. So this should go ahead and execute everything. Now, in some scenarios, when you're executing it, you might get an authorization error. It could be due to the code deploy, like whatever the IAM role that you have attached for this code build. Okay, so that might not have the necessary permission to push the artifacts to a different S3 bucket that you are currently working with. The reason is when you create the build project, it might use one S3 bucket, and when you are making use of code pipeline, it might have used a different S3 bucket. So in such scenarios, so it is recommended that you assign an S3 bucket permission for the code build. Okay, you can see that in my pipeline, currently it has fetched the latest commit from this overall code commit. Okay, once it fetches the latest code from this code commit, it is now performing the build. So let us go ahead and look into this code build right here by clicking on this execution ID. See, now the build is in progress. So let us go to this action of build. Okay, the build is in progress. Let's do one thing on the left hand side. I'll go to this code build again. We'll take a look into this build history. Okay, we can see that the build has been succeeded. It is a build number 2. Okay, now once the build is completed, okay, it is now moving to the deployment stage. So it is now performing the deployment of the code. All right, so that is what it is doing. Now, once the deployment is completed, we can go ahead and go to the public URL and see whether a web application has been deployed or not. So that is what we can do it. So now the deployment is completed. That's even amazing. I'll just go to my EC2 instance, which we have created. Now on this EC2 instance, I'll just select it. I'll go to this public IPv4 address. See, it is now taking me to a website that I have launched over here with the help of this code deploy, and everything that I have done with the help of this code pipeline, where if I do any changes on my source code, it will trigger my entire pipeline and takes the latest code, perform the build and deploys it on the mentioned server. So this is about the automating the CI/CD, guys, that is implementing the continuous integration and the continuous deployment technique on a software development lifecycle using the AWS DevOps tools. All right, team. So with this, we come to the end of today's agenda. Any questions, team, that you have got when you are going through this topic of MLOps in your learning journey, or any issues that you have faced, please do let me know. Okay, Sridhar says, sir, no question, sir, as of now. Thank you so much. I'm enjoying the course. Okay, thank you, Sridhar. Samiksha says, no question, sir. I'm enjoying. Okay, thank you, Samiksha. What about others? Sandhya. Okay, thank you, Sandhya. Okay, I've got a question from Shruti. Shruti is asking, yes, sir, I'm new to this session. So can you please help me with the course link? Sure, let me just share you with the same. So the course that I'm talking about is practical MLOps that I've got. Give me a second. I'll just share it with you. Okay, this is the course that you can refer to it. You can click on the link to join with us. All right. So what about others? Any other questions, team? Santrupti says, I'm enjoying, sir. Thank you so much for creating. Okay, thank you, Santrupti. Okay, thank you, Rajitesh. Okay, I'm glad, Eddie. Okay, I'm glad. Okay, Wharton. Okay, thank you, Robin. I'm glad. Okay, thank you, Sampriti. Okay, thanks a lot, Sampriti.
Okay, thanks a lot everyone for all your kind words. So I'm glad that I've got an opportunity to host the webinar with you all. So I hope to see you next time. So please follow us on LinkedIn and please follow us on Meetup group. Thank you, Rajana. Thanks a lot, everyone. And I hope to see you next time. Do check out the link in case I think most of the learners have requested for the uh, like for the course link. You can just check out that link that I mentioned over there for more information. But thanks again for joining in and taking your time and spending time with us. So I hope to see you next time.